What's up, everybody? This is episode 3 of the Pro Show. This is hosted by the Legends Golf Course in Franklin, Indiana. I'm Thomas Crow, and with me today is my co-host Brian Powers.
How's it going, Thomas?
Pretty good. We got a fun one today.
We do. The Pro Show is kind of our show where we get to bring in different people from outside, and today is no different. We have with us the man who has been taking you home on the afternoon drive for, 20 years now?
20
almost?
years.
20
It has been a
years.
long time. Yeah, since 2004 when I started at the other place and then
Yeah.
made the transition. So, yeah, I'm not good at doing math. You got a math department here? I'm going to have to go down and
you
ask
gotta
somebody.
carry the
That's about
2,
16 going on 17
Yeah.
years. Been a while. It has.
So-
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We have JMV, the ride with JMV on 107.5 and 1070 The Fan. Thanks for coming out here early in the morning.
Well, I mean, Thomas got a hold of me, and I thought I'd take my daughter to Walnut Grove, which is in Center Grove, but I thought it's only about 5 minutes away, so I'll just come here in the morning and we'll do a little TV. Sounds good to me, especially talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll hit the NCAA tournament here in a little bit, but obviously with your job, just kind of fill everyone in on what exactly it is, I guess you do. Most people probably know. But
There's a lot of yapping going on. A lot of people think you just slide in there about 2:59 and just start talking, and then you're done talking about 6 o'clock. A lot more goes into it, obviously, with prep work, and you got to. The one thing that I always try to do is it's pretty easy around here, especially right now with the IU situation, with the NCAA tournament, with Colts free agency or the NFL free agency, but I try to think about what people are going to want to talk about, and I try to keep it streamlined and keep it right down the middle because you want to keep listeners as long as you can. And clearly right now the most interest they would have, let's just say for the moment when we're taping this right now, is the Archie Miller, who's going to be next down at IU, the NCAA tournament, which is all encompassed here within the state of Indiana, and then you got NFL free agency, which Chris Ballard, in the way that he kind of goes about business, the first day is not that entertaining, but we're considering like day 2 and day 3, once it really gets going, that the Colts will have, with their $43 million in cap space, a lot to do. So the Colts are always on top of the list. You always want to talk about them, but we have so much going on right now. I mean, the Pacers, as we sit here last night, played until after midnight and lost in Denver after getting in late in a snowstorm. So you got to pay attention to all that and got to be ready to talk about what the people want to talk about. So you got to be prepared and think about what you're doing before you get in there.
yeah.
So being a listener of your show and then following you on Twitter, there's 2 hashtags that you're going to have to explain to me. One of them is the JMV sucks.
Right on.
And then the other one is like your...
It's the JMV takeover.
Yeah, like the JMV takeover.
Well, it's kind of interesting. So when the pandemic started, I was kind of bored and I kind of wanted to do some other stuff. So right next door we have a station called B1057. And for those of you that may not know, it's a music station that is kind of 80s, 90s, and today. And I said, how about if I go in there on a Saturday night and just do an all request show, an all 80s all request show. And I started that really last Saturday. It's been a year. And I thought I would just do it during the pandemic and then be done with it. And of course, the pandemic's still going on, but it kind of took off, and now it's built some revenue for our station. So I've been doing it for a year, and I guess I'm going to continue to do it. So I take requests on a Saturday night from 6 until midnight on B105.7, and people call in and say, hey, I want to hear this, and then I play them back on the air over the top of their song. And for you, Thomas, because you're much younger, you probably don't get that. Is a local radio aspect that is absolutely lost because most of the things on the weekend now is taped. It is voice tracked. They'll voice track it and tape it on a Thursday, and then it'll play back on a Saturday or a Sunday. This is me live in studio, and the hashtag JMV Takeover is something that I use on Twitter that gets a lot of response. I use it for requests. I use it to give away stuff. I use it just to, at least social media-wise, communicate with people that are listening. And it's really taken off to the point where I think I'm going to be doing it forever now. So I don't know. I mean, it's a long time on a Saturday, but it is so different from sports talk. The thing about music, when you're doing live music radio, is that nobody's mad, nobody's angry, nobody is going to be mad about your opinion. I mean, everybody just enjoys music. People like to hear themselves on the radio, so they come on and they have their favorite song, they request it, I put them on, and it's all a lot of fun. And it's completely different from having to talk about somebody being fired or having to talk about some team not performing well or whatever, and you're always going to have these edgy opinions doing that. This is just kind of right down the middle, and really, it's interesting to me to look back on it for the past year and see how the ratings numbers and how many people tune in to songs that are 35 and 40 years old. And I think what that goes to show is the thirst that people have for live local radio. You know, you guys are giving a service with what you're doing right here, giving people a local outlet. And Thomas, you're learning about this as well. Local radio does matter, even in a world of technology when everything worldwide is basically at your fingertips. And it's been an enjoyable ride for a year.
Yeah, definitely. And then with the JMV sucks.
Yeah.
That obviously you're someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously.
I beat people to the punch. Yeah. Before they say, that guy sucks, I say, hey, listen, I already tell you that I suck. They make shirts and they make, masks that say it on it. So I beat them to the punch, basically. It's just kind of fun. I mean, I'm not going to do this without having fun.
Right.
I mean, it would be brutal going in there. That's the one thing. I always want to make this fun. We'll get serious and get to the point. But people that want to listen to a show, I don't think tune in to be more depressed, more angered, more negative about what's going on in a long day already. So I'm not going to give them that. I mean, we're going to talk about serious issues, but we're going to have a lot of fun. And the whole JMV sucks, the hashtag JMV sucks thing is just something that grew, and then the shop in Broad Ripple and Carmel made shirts out of it. It's just been a fun thing. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Now, as someone who's in education, I think you're kind of selling yourself a little short on this because you do a lot of things. You do a lot of things with that. So what do you do?
I mean, we give away stuff with it. I do stuff for teachers' treasures with it. It's just another way to have fun. And you get a lot of people that say, I'm the foremost authority. I'm the only one that has an opinion, and I kind of take the opposite angle. I mean, to me, it's important to get the opinion of those that take the time to listen and want to call or want to tweet or want to email you with their opinion. I mean, they are taking time out, and to me, they want to hear their opinion, even if it's ridiculous. I mean, even if it's, for example, the IU job, and everybody's talking about Brad Stevens right now. Well, Brad Stevens coaches the Celtics and is probably not going to quit in March to take the IU job. But people want to get their opinion across about how great that would be if Scott Dolson were able to reel in Brad Stevens. And it may not make sense to most people out there. That makes sense to that person. And I think that's something I've always tried to respect.
So before we talk about what is one of the best 2 or 3 week spans of the entire year for sports fans, we'll discuss, like you just mentioned, the Archie Miller firing.
Right.
You talked about it on your show yesterday, but we'll kind of make you repeat yourself just a little bit for us. And so just kind of your thoughts on him getting fired and the buyout and all that happened.
Well, what happened was you couldn't go on in a fifth year with Archie. He had one more year remaining on his contract. His buyout was $10 million. And I think the hang up here was the fact that you go through a pandemic, you didn't have football, you don't have fans in the stands, and you don't have the money within the athletic department to get that done. But outside donors do, and a couple in this case wanted to change. So what we come to find out yesterday from Scott Dolson was they had two donors, one that just anteed up the entire $10 million buyout for Archie Miller to get him to go away and to create the availability for a new head coach. And then there's another that is going to put some money into the new hiring of a head coach. So you had two donors that were willing to step up to make sure that IU was no longer going to be coached by Archie Miller. I don't know Archie Miller very well. I've only had him on like once. He seems like a nice enough guy, but that is a program in which if it's not going by now, it's not going to go. And the biggest problem you had is not even so much the losing as it was the complete apathy that's taken over with this program, especially over the past couple of years and into this year. I mean, you go down the stretch of this year during their losing streak, the fact that people were saying, I'm not even watching it anymore. I don't even care what happens anymore. And you can't afford, even more so during a pandemic, to go into next year with that type of apathy. And then fans are going to show how they feel about it by not showing up to games. Or, as we saw at the Big Ten tournament, booing the coach, booing the team. You just came to a point where you could not continue with Archie Miller as the coach. They had the option through a couple of donors to make that change, and that's what they decided to do, and I think it was the right move.
I can't imagine just having that kind of money.
Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
just $10 million.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I think about, guys. I want to know if these two guys feel like they should have a voice in the hire.
Right.
Oh, I bet they do.
Hey, listen, I put up $10 million. I like this guy. I don't like that guy. You know, if I'm helping pay to bring in a guy, I mean, it's like, you know, you go to the grocery store, here's $50. I mean, you probably want, the famous Bill Parcells line is, you know, if I'm going to prepare the meal, I want to buy the groceries, right? So you probably want a little bit of input or feel like you have a little bit of input exactly who's going to be hired. So I don't know how that is going to work, but I do know this. Much like with Fred Glass. Fred Glass, you know, came in, raised funds, got buildings built, upgraded the facilities. No doubt about that. Great job with it. Fred Glass chose Tom Allen. Tom Allen has grown into obviously something where a lot of people think only great things are to come with the IU football program for the first time in forever. But Fred failed at the IU coaching hire, and that is forever going to be around his neck. He's never going to lose that. And this is similar to Scott Dolson. Scott Dolson, now this is going to be his signature hire for this basketball program. And if it works, he is going, and they bring him back to what we know IU to be well past Thomas's age there, then he's going to go down in history as one of the best. But if you fail, it's going to hang around your neck forever. So that is, to me, you can't fail at this hire. Even if you do other things within that university that are so good and you get all this gratification, if you fail on that basketball hire, that is what you're going to wear forever.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe he went to these donors and said, here's the short list of guys I have. These are who I want. And then he would say,
I'm sure because they didn't hire, and everybody hires a research firm, a consulting firm now, which is lame, I think, because you ought to be able to do it yourself. The fact that he did not hire a consulting firm, I think, tells me that they have somebody in mind. I mean, I'm sure in private conversations that people that put up that amount of money, they probably have ideas run past them. Mm-hmm. But this is ultimately going to be, I think, Scott's call here, without a doubt. And to me, with the decision he made yesterday in firing him and the fact they did not bring in a consulting firm, I don't think he knows who he wants right now. I don't know if that's somebody that's in this NCAA tournament. I don't know. I don't know if it's a former IU guy, but I think he knows who he wants right now for sure.
Did you have any idea this was coming?
Oh, yeah, I think everybody, there's just no way. I mean, logic would dictate to you that there's no way you can move forward with the way this is going. I was on Fox 59 with Chris Hagan on Sunday night. We were in front of Lucas Oil Stadium, and I said, man, this is the end. I mean, you can't go any further. I mean, it was embarrassing with 4,000 fans in the stands on Thursday, and they're booing everybody and booing Archie and fire Archie chants. And, you're not responding to the fans. You're not, doing it because the fans are doing that. You're doing it because you understand that nothing has gotten better over 4 years. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that's going to get better in year number 5. And you needed to cut the tie before the apathy, before the non-caring, and before the overall game on the floor gets worse. You got to show people out there that you're willing to make a change. To me, people view that as a tough call. During a pandemic, you don't have the money. You have to have a donor swoop in to pay the bill for you. All right, people look at that as a tough call. To me, it was an easy call. There's just no way you can move forward with the guy. None.
So I think we'll move into the March Madness that we want to talk about. And I'm no Andy Katz, so there's a lot of games on here that we don't know the answers to, but I think there's some that are pretty interesting. So I think we'll just kind of go
sure.
Region by region.
Obviously, you give them to me and we'll go. Yeah.
Obviously, I think Gonzaga is probably a pretty locked for going really far.
Right.
And then immediately, I was watching the selection show and nobody's bracket is busted after the first game. Second game comes on, Oklahoma, Missouri, and everybody's thinking, well,
Yeah.
here goes my bracket.
Exactly. I mean, that's just the way. I think this year, and this is how I viewed it, I think you're going to have more early upsets than we have seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that this situation, this landscape kind of plays into a lot of early upsets. But I do think toward the tail end, I think chalk is going to rise, and you're going to see, Gonzaga. I'm kind of skeptical about Alabama. I have them in my Final Four right now. I'm skeptical about that. I'm even more skeptical about Baylor with the way they played outside of COVID and going through that basically month-long pause that they went through. They haven't looked the same since then. Still good, but haven't looked the same. And then I think Illinois, to me, Illinois and Gonzaga are the two teams that stick out as really showing here down the stretch and throughout the season how much better they are right now. And I think both of those teams have a couple of really good pros. Really, Gonzaga probably has 2 or 3. Illinois has at least a couple as well. Mm-hmm. So that's my championship game, Gonzaga and Illinois. And it's funny, you look at this tournament, and it's the first time since 1976 that IU, or I should say that Duke and Kentucky have not been involved. Duke, Kentucky, and IU. No, check that. I'm sorry. Duke and Kentucky haven't been in since 1976. And obviously, no team has gone unbeaten and won a championship since 1976 in IU. So I think this is the year where Gonzaga goes all the way. They run the table, and they win the national title going unbeaten. I just think they're that good. Even with the WCC that weighs them down, with not a lot of great talent night after night playing in that conference, they just look stacked. They have depth, and they got guys that can do everything, especially score the basketball.
Yeah, like you said, being in the West Coast, it's hard to be 100% confident about. They're the first team since 1960 to win 23 straight games by double digits.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's hard to look away from the team.
And their conference is weak. Now BYU is good. BYU is an at-large team. BYU is good. Normally St. Mary's is good. They're not as good. They're an NIT team this year. But the problem that they have is they just don't get tested in January and February. And that's a long time. Like, they get tested, they go out and play anybody, anywhere.
Yeah, that non-conference schedule was brutal.
Before they begin. I mean, they had a game, set up here in Indy with Baylor that got postponed because of COVID. But they try to go out and play everybody. The problem they have is you got to sit around for 2 months and, you're playing San Diego and San Francisco and Pepperdine, and that's just not going to get you prepared. And then you go to your conference tournament. I thought it was good, and Mark Few said this last week, that they got down big to BYU in that championship game, and they had to fight back in the second half. I mean, kind of put a little scare into them to maybe help them recognize that this is how it's going to be and better prepare them for the NCAA tournament, because that conference just can't do it. It's not strong enough.
Right, yeah. Now looking just a little bit real quick at the West still, I'm going to give an upset. The 5-12 always has those.
Exactly.
But I'm thinking, Creighton, they're sliding. Their coach has been kind of a lightning rod. And UCSB 22-4. That 12-5 is looking kind of juicy.
I would agree with you there. And Creighton has been sliding. Creighton looked terrible in that Big East title game.
Just destroyed them.
Got run out of the gym, and you kind of wonder where their head is right now collectively. It could go either way here. It could be, hey, we recognize that we faltered down the stretch and maybe we're rejuvenated, or that just could be who they are right now. But I would agree, if there is an upset, I think on that list right now, Creighton is probably one that would be ripe for it early on here.
Yeah.
And I think with Greg McDermott also having his scandal that's going on, it's just hard to think their team is in the right place.
I have a ton here. I got Ohio. Let's look it over mine right now. Ohio is one. I have Colorado winning a couple of games. I don't think that's any kind of upset or anything like that, the way they played this year. But to me, I think early on, guys, we're just going to see a lot of surprising games. And I think the environment of playing it the way they're playing it is going to lend to that. I think it's going to be more difficult for those higher seeds, those power conference teams, to just kind of wiggle their way through those first couple of games. I think that it's going to be something worth bearing to watch as far as the upsets. I think early upsets, later on, I think those better teams we have seen all year, especially late, I think they flex their muscle.
Yeah, and then talking about Colorado, A couple interesting things. I mean, they're playing Georgetown in the first round. And Georgetown's on a roll. Also with Colorado, a name there that I think if he was in a different place could have changed a lot of things that we're talking about right now, and that's Mckinley Wright.
Yes.
I think if he could have come, he was committed to Dayton with Archie. He wanted to come to IU, but they couldn't get rid of him for the APR scores, and now he's one of the best point guards in the nation. And I've talked about it for a couple of years with some of my friends, just how that would have changed the whole dynamic potentially here at
it
IU.
really could have. I mean, he could have come here and maybe not gotten any better like everybody else did, but or gotten worse like some people did. But yeah, I mean, that could have certainly changed the dynamic of everything right there, and he has been the most important piece with Colorado. I look at teams too, like Winthrop is another one. I think Colgate had that high top 10 net at the end of the year, and a lot of people are predicting maybe Colgate winning a game in this too. I think those early round games, lower seeds versus higher seeds, are more interesting this year than we've seen them in a while.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of teams that either haven't played many games and it's kind of unknown. And then, sticking in the East, Michigan still has Dickinson. They still have Wagner, but they lost their second leading scorer in Livers.
Yeah, I think they're still deep enough, but there's no doubt that's going to hurt. I mean, we saw it hurt in the Big Ten tournament too. I mean, you just can't get around that. And I mean, it's too bad too, because arguably next to Gonzaga, once Michigan came off of that pause, it was incredible how they responded. That first game on the road with Wisconsin, got down in the first half, came back and won. They looked as good as anybody after coming back from that pause. And then now you have this happen, and you take a guy that certainly is a veteran presence, that's a scorer, somebody that you lean on out of the lineup, even if you have all that depth what they do, that's going to have a drastic effect, especially when you're playing some of the better teams.
Yeah. And then you look down a little bit further, you got Michigan State and UCLA in the play-in game. The winner of that takes BYU. I mean, you'd like to think that poor BYU, they got the 6th seed. They're like, hey, we've had a great year with Mark Pope as their coach.
Matt Harms?
Yeah, Matt Harms.
Yep.
I'm an IU fan, so I don't
Matt Harms transferred out to get there. So,
and then they're going to have to play Michigan State. Now, just as a whole, how do you think, do you think that these teams we see in the Big Ten, like you've got Wisconsin, you've got Rutgers as a 10 seed, do you think those teams are going to be more set up for deeper runs just based off the Big Ten?
I mean, you're talking about two teams that have veterans. I mean, both teams, especially Rutgers, has veterans, not just in the backcourt, but, have a veteran up front. They're hot and cold. I mean, they have really good players, talented players, but against IU, they look like the best team in the nation, and against other teams, they look terrible. And then you have Wisconsin that's got a lot of veterans too. Wisconsin just hasn't had the typical, consistent Wisconsin type of season with this group. But certainly dangerous as those seeds, there's no question about it moving into this week.
Yeah, like you said, Wisconsin's a slow burn team.
Yeah.
Wisconsin is not a necessarily entertaining team to watch.
No doubt.
Like you said, veterans, and they play great defense. They get the job done most of the time.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, maybe they do catch a little spark here. It's just they have had such a level of inconsistency. I think a lot of teams have this year, and it's rightly so. I mean, these kids have been locked up. They're going back and forth from their room to practice to the room to practice, and it hasn't been any sense of normalcy whatsoever in 2 years. So I can get why you'd be up and down, but it's not your average Wisconsin team, even if it looks like it should be.
Yeah. Now, looking at the Midwest bracket, one thing I want to talk about, and I know you're well-versed in this and would love to talk about this team, Houston.
I love Kelvin Sampson, so great job out of Houston.
Yeah, Kelvin Sampson.
Back on the sidelines at Assembly Hall.
And Cleveland State. Now, that to the longtime IU fans,
Cleveland State
a couple of Kelvin Sampson and Cleveland State right there, just in Assembly Hall, just taking that knife and just poking
Cleveland
it right
State
in the back.
from 1986 in the tournament upset, and then Kelvin Sampson and what Kelvin Sampson did to the program too. Kelvin Sampson's team, other than when IU beat them in the Final Four back in 2002, he's had some disappointment there. I mean, his Houston team looks as talented as anybody, but they also look vulnerable too in some respects. But it's going to be interesting to see him on the sideline for the first time since he was ousted. And you know.
Now, you had him on your show once, didn't you?
He hung up on me. Yeah, I didn't have him on again. He hasn't been on since when he hung up on me. He got mad about. Yeah, I think what happens sometimes, these guys get a dictation from somebody else about what a sports talk show host or a writer has been talking about, and then has that preconceived notion. And somebody had told him that I wasn't for him to get the job at IU. And he came on with me because when he was at Oklahoma, they were going to play. I remember this back in the middle 2000s. They were going to play at Purdue, and he talked glowingly about Katie. Loved to come on. He was a very engaging guest, and he was far from that when he came on. Once he got the head coaching job at IU, and I think the last thing he said to me was, "You know what, John? And I'm acting like I'm holding the phone here. You know what, John? We all have to have a level of thick skin to get through in this world." And then bang, hung up, man. That was that. That was the last time Kelvin Sampson was on my show.
It's an ironic line to hang up on, isn't it?
Man, yeah. It was not an impermissible call, I don't think, but it was a way to go out right there for sure.
Well, he's got a team that ranks 5th in offense and 3rd in defense, so he's got a talented team.
They have a ton of talent there. It's just, I mean, it just seems like that, maybe they're ripe to me. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. It starts down in Bloomington. That'll certainly be a storyline, but he has a talented team, no doubt.
Now, looking ahead up at the South region, obviously the lone Indiana team, Purdue Boilermakers, they're in a good little quad right there. I mean, you've got Villanova, who's got some injuries.
Colin Gillespie's not playing, so that's a big deal.
They're on a slide. Winthrop 23-1, but again, how legit is the 23-1? Purdue's playing well. Coach Painter always has them ready for the tournament. I mean,
North Carolina's been disappointing this year.
Yeah.
This to me reeks of Purdue and Baylor in a Sweet 16 situation here. And then we'll see what happens. You'll get Scott Drew versus Matt Painter. Because the one thing, and we talked about Archie Miller and what hasn't transpired over the past 4 years, guys come there and they don't get better. Guys go to Purdue and they get better. Yeah. And we have seen that this year with this young group that Matt Painter has coached up. We have seen them consistently get better. One of the things to me that sticks out about their loss in the Big Ten Conference Tournament is that Travion Williams, who hadn't had the type of offensive performances we become used to over the course of the season, hadn't had it leading up to that. He did have it then. So maybe he's re-sparked. And the one thing you have to look for is their guards being able to shoot. Because if their guards can shoot from three-point range, that opens things up for Williams and Edey on the interior, and that is a big deal. That's when Purdue is at their best. And to me, it all hinges on whether or not they're going to get guys on the perimeter that are going to be able to knock down shots. And, in that environment for new guys, I know they progressed this year, but that always can be a tough environment. They play at Lucas Oil Stadium. Obviously that's where they played the Big Ten Conference Tournament. But it's still going to be something where, to me, their guard play is going to dictate just how far they can go and if they ultimately can get a meeting in the Sweet 16 with Baylor.
Yeah, down big to Ohio State at the beginning of the second half. Ivy hits 2 threes in a row. Holtman has to call a timeout, and then it goes to overtime.
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, like you said, shooting threes for Purdue is going to have to be huge if they want to meet any of the teams in here. So, looking in the West, you said, or we were talking, Gonzaga will probably come out of the top.
Yep.
And then the bottom.
Bama is who I have, and I'm skeptical about it. Maybe because I haven't seen them enough. I know they're high tempo. I know they get a lot of shots up, a lot of threes up. Nate Oates has been a fantastic coach there. I don't trust Alabama, but you know what? You mentioned it too. Without Livers at Michigan, you kind of wonder about Michigan. And then everybody else, I think you can just kind of throw in a big pot there and jumble it up a little bit. So I decided to go Alabama all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean,
ask Thomas who he's got in the Final Four in this.
Thomas, who you got, buddy?
I was very impressed with a certain team on a Sunday SEC championship.
Were you now?
And I can't see Alabama beating LSU 4 times in a season, so I have LSU. They have a guy who goes for 23 a night.
They certainly cheated their brains out to get there, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, Will Wade might not be the most honest.
They made him a strong offer to get him there.
I'm telling you what, you just keep going. So
I mean, 3 guys who average 16 or more, I see high numbers and I start drooling. So I'm not saying I am historically bad at brackets, And this year will be no different, but I'm going to stay confident.
I don't mind. Alabama, I'm skeptical about Alabama, and I mentioned too Baylor. That's somebody else that just because they were playing so well and then had to step back and pause, and they just have not looked the same. That doesn't mean they're not going to in this tournament, but I still have them in the Final Four, and I just think Illinois is legit. I mean, Illinois looks so good in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, surviving a lot of things, making big shots, and then getting, you're getting production from guys that aren't your frontline guys as well. It just seems like that they're hitting their stride. And I think Brad Underwood is, I don't even know if I'd call him underrated. He is one of the better coaches, I think, out there right now. And yet another guy like Chris Holtmann that was brought in at the same time, Archie Miller. And you can see what Illinois is doing, see what Ohio State's doing, see what IU's been doing, and it stands to reason why IU's making a change right now.
Yeah. All right, so we've got Gonzaga, we've got Alabama, we've got
Or
Illinois.
LSU.
Or LSU, yes. That one's a toss-up, Thomas and JMV. We'll see. And then in the South, this one, I mean, this is just a bunch of unknowns. And, I mean, you could see, you could say 5 or 6 teams. Like, I could see Purdue making a run.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ohio State has had a great close of the season, no doubt about that. I mean, Colin Gillespie being missing from Villanova is a big deal. I have Winthrop upsetting them. Texas Tech and Utah State. I think I have Utah State winning that game. I think I have Colgate beating Arkansas. I don't know. When I filled my bracket out, I don't know what state of mind I might have been in there. But
well,
I'm going to have to go back and look it up again. But, Vatek and, I mean, there's nobody, including the top seed in that region, really scares you. So that thing is wide open.
And this is the South bracket is the kind of the Peegs board bracket. You've got Scott Drew. You've got Chris Beard. You've got Eric Musselman on there. So that's
you do.
A lot of Peegsters going to be checking out the South bracket. So who you got coming out of there?
The South bracket, I have Baylor, and the Midwest is I have Illinois, and then we go. What did I say? Alabama, and then Gonzaga on the other side. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier too. I just think, to me, this is the best chance that anybody, certainly since UNLV. Back in, 1991, had an opportunity to win a national title and go unbeaten. I mean, Gonzaga is talented, and then they got a really sweet bracket to deal with, a really nice region to get to the Final Four. And if you've watched them play at all, and I've watched them past 10-plus years, my son has always, for some reason, liked it. So we find ourselves staying up and watching Thursday night, midnight WCC games. This is, even before when they went to the national title game and lost to Carolina out in Arizona, this is by far the best team they had. And they've had some talent run through there over the past 5-6 years especially. The best team by far.
Like you said, and before we get to our what might be semi-obvious national champions, something that was very apparent to me watching the selection show was, wherever Villanova goes, big chance for an upset.
Yeah.
And then they somehow get put against a 23-1 seed. So not looking good for Jay Wright in the South bracket.
I mean, and if you're Winthrop too, I mean, this is, I don't know if you want everybody talking about this being the upset special if you're that team, because it seems like when everybody, props it up as the upset special, it doesn't happen. It's like now they become the favorite in a lot of minds. So everybody's looking at, obviously without Gillespie, Villanova is so vulnerable. So we'll see, but I mean, I pick Winthrop in that game too. That's one of my upsets. I have a myriad of ridiculous upsets in the first couple of rounds here. I'm going to have to rethink and redo my entire thing. But
now, I would safe to assume that you're going to go with Gonzaga for the national.
Gonzaga's national champion. They're going to be the first unbeaten national champion since IU in 1976, and then we'll make the argument after this happens. What is tougher, to do it in 1976 where you played in other arenas, or to do it in 2021 when you had to play in empty arenas and had to be holed up the entire year and had to hope that you didn't get COVID so you'd be shut down. So which is going to be the tougher navigation is, to me, going to be the topic of discussion come mid-April whenever Gonzaga cuts down the nets. So.
Now, are you going to take your son? You going to take Blake to the championship?
Well, the problem is there are no tickets. The tickets went like this, and I can't get credentialed.
Pull any passes or anything?
No, well, the problem is with the credentialed stuff, they don't let anybody in. You're not, even the local people that are credentialed, like the Chris Hagans of the world, have to sit in a room. Like they sit in they can't even sit in the arena and watch. They have to sit in a room and watch it on TV. So it is going to be a tough likelihood for us to follow Gonzaga. I'd like to because I like that group a great deal. Corey Kissberg is a guy that I never thought was going to be this type of player. He was always just kind of the extra pass, three-point shooter, and now he's as versatile as a scorer as anybody in college basketball. Drew Timme was a guy last year that kind of made strides, and you wondered what he was going to end up being. And really, they had a guy named Tilly last year who was a French volleyball player and was often injured. And he ended up making himself available for the draft. He may be overseas right now, probably is overseas, but he's a guy that probably was better served for Mark Few that he did decide to move on. He clearly wasn't ready, and he was often injured, but it was better that he moved on to give Drew Timme the opportunity to come in and become what he's become. But and probably their X factor is Jalen Suggs, the first McDonald's All-American that Mark Few has ever had. And he is as talented. And if you saw in that BYU game, I mean, he was the difference maker of that down the stretch. He was just making shots that a lot of guys in college basketball are incapable of making. So they're stacked.
And then, obviously, Yai is one of the best rebounding guards I've ever seen.
Right.
And then Nembhard, who transferred from Florida,
is good. And they just have a great deal of depth. I mean, they have depth. I'm sure a lot of teams would like to have guys that don't even get a lot of run on their team, on other teams. But this is as deep. And I remember back when they went to the national title game, they had guys like Nigel Williams-Goss, and they were good. But, they got South Carolina. They ousted in that national semifinal.
They had Domas, too, didn't they?
I don't think so.
No, that was his
wasn't.
rookie.
It was Karnowski and Zach Collins.
It was, what's his name in Washington? And I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head. Sorry about that. Sometimes that happens, too. That's why you have to prepare yourself. They didn't have Sabonis then, but they had a wealth of talent. There's no question about it. And they got to the championship game, lost to Carolina. This is a much better team than that one, for sure.
Shevik Karnowski and Zach Collins?
Well, I mean, the dude from Japan. That's what happens. See, sometimes, especially when I'm 51 and I got half of my brain is clouded up and the other half is like freely thinking.
So safe to assume you're going Gonzaga as well?
It hurts me because I don't want a team to go undefeated. As an IU fan,
oh, I know that's the feeling, isn't it?
That
is a definite feeling.
Gut punch after another. But I guess I could pick Illinois, but I've felt the whole time. It's like, oh yeah, all this great basketball I'm watching, and I forget Gonzaga's.
Yeah. I mean, in normal years, if they had one loss, you'd feel better about picking them as an IU fan. But see, to me, that's what is going to make a brilliant debate afterwards. Because if they're the first in 76, we are going to debate what path was more difficult because of circumstances. And we'd always think that, going to Michigan and Iowa and to Purdue and all that back in 76 was incredibly difficult, playing Kentucky. But man, when you don't know if you're going to be able to play, or you got to have dudes holed up in their rooms in Spokane and hope nobody gets COVID where you have to shut it down, that's tough to navigate too. So I'm sure we'll have that debate if Gonzaga wins it all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, DeSumo is good. If I walked into a gym and saw Kofi Coburn, I would probably leave that gym.
He's a big dude, man.
But I'll agree with both of you. Gonzaga, I think, will run the table. I think they're just incredible. So
I got Gonzaga winning it all. I guess we're all in agreement here.
I think so.
Yeah. So that means they're definitely not.
There's not a chance they win.
That's the other thing about Gonzaga too. They have disappointed as much as they have thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, people, especially when they were trying to make that transition to, this is a nice little cute Dan Munson, Richie Fromm story of the late 90s, to where people started counting on them in their brackets to get through as a high seed. And then like Wichita State, back when Wichita State went to the Final Four and knocked them out. And they were always kind of described at that point in time. They went from the great story to the, I'm sick and tired of hearing about this, these guys are nothing but pretenders, to now being one of the top schools in college basketball. Right. I mean, they are a college basketball powerhouse, and nobody would have seen that. I talked to Paul Westhead, who coached at Loyola Marymount. This is a couple of months ago. He coached Loyola Marymount with Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball back in the early 90s. And I said, because they were in the WCC as well, I said, did you ever think Because you look back in the early 90s, Gonzaga was known for having John Stockton be a graduate, and they were at the absolute bottom every single year. And I said, would you ever thought that Gonzaga was going to be this college basketball powerhouse that they transformed themselves into? And he said, no, absolutely not. And, if you remember, Dan Monson was their first coach, got them into the tournament. They had Richie Fromm, Casey Calvary, Santangelo, I forget what his name was, but they had that Sweet 16 run back in the late 90s, and then he left for Minnesota, and Mark Few took over, and Mark Few has elevated it with this high level of consistency like I don't think anybody in the world could have ever predicted. It's been amazing.
Yeah, well, I hear that you have some other show you have to speak at today, so...
well, not so much a show. I got to go have a little lunch, and then we'll go to a show and do a show.
Something at 3. Well, I don't know exactly what it is.
Oh, that show, yes, I do.
But apparently I have some more sports
I
to
have
talk
on that
about.
show today, and we've got a ton of Colts conversation, because I'm assuming I may go over and look at my phone now, and maybe Chris Ballard just kind of jumped into the free agency fray. Everybody freaks out. Me included, too, because on the first day of legalized tampering in the NFL free agency, the Colts have done absolutely nothing except lose to Nico Autry yesterday to the Tennessee Titans, and everybody else is doing this. New England is, like, going crazy.
New England just got Hunter
players.
Henry, too.
They got who?
Hunter Henry, the tight end from the Chargers, just signed him just now.
The Patriots did? They just signed Jonnu Smith
Yeah,
yesterday.
They just got both of them. Bill
Still
Belichick
have-
had
they
something
still-
in mind.
Hey, they still have Cam Newton, so he couldn't throw a ball
Why do you
5
need
yards.
both those tight ends? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Bill
I guess
Belichick's got something in
You
mind.
got weapons. They got Kendrick Bourne yesterday. They got
Aguilar.
Nelson Aguilar yesterday.
They still don't have a quarterback.
They don't have a quarterback right now, but, man, they got some weapons, don't they? They're going to look pretty. That's kind of the team I've always wanted, just a lot of wide receiving talent, a lot of tight end talent. That Chris Ballard does not agree with me whatsoever on the way to build the team. But, yeah, we'll be talking about that and more today at 3 o'clock.
Yep, listen to JMV at 3 o'clock on 10-7 of The
Thank you,
Fan.
guys.
I listen to it on my way home.
Appreciate
I know
it, guys.
you listen to it when you run. JMV, we really appreciate you coming on. We
Anytime.
love talking
Yep.
sports.
Anytime, man. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, that's been awesome. For JMV, for my co-host Brian Powers, this has been the Pro Show, Episode 3, hosted by the Legends Golf Course. I'm Thomas Crow.